All right. And come down and visit the Brickyard. So this popped up in my feed the other day, and I just have to play it. So hopefully the audio is still working. Anyway, that hit right here. So am I going to be on like a 3-second delay the entire time?
Well, that's because I was trying, because I'm getting that there's no audio.
Oh, the two people watching it at home didn't get to hear it? We'll send them the link. You know, I sat here for an hour. I probably could have figured out how to display on the right monitor before. All right, so
Should have asked AI how to do that.
should have. So it could give me hallucination and project on the SharePoint meeting. So as you know, Chad made a joke. Obviously, Microsoft is invested in AI, and Copilot came out. So this is one of the talks they wanted us to give as MVPs, and so I've taken their core stuff and twisted it as I always do, and made it, I think, more meaningful. I will say, since the last time I was down here talking about AI stuff, I have gotten to be a lot more impressed with Copilot, as in Copilot Chat. I think Copilot in the IDE still sucks, especially if you're doing something that looks repetitive. For example, let's say you're writing a case statement, right? Or a switch statement, and you're putting your case statements. And I do a lot of Control D, copy it all, right? Copy the block, right? There's my break and everything else. And I go through and I update all the values. But you update the same, you update the first value, then Copilot assumes you want to update every single one exactly the same. So I literally have had to replace my escape key on my keyboard because I've been mashing it so hard to get Copilot to shut up. But Copilot Chat, which is what we're going to look at a lot today, I'm using a lot. Now, I am going to make this statement. I will say it over and over again. Copilot and the AI-assisted coding for a new developer is incredibly evil, right? Not only is it evil at the Bellatrix Lestrange level of evil, but it's the same amount of batshit crazy. If you don't know who Bellatrix Lestrange is, Google it. Harry Potter, whatever. And here's why, right? I still think if I have a junior developer, and junior not just young, right? New, could be a change of life or anything. Somebody who doesn't have a whole lot of experience, I'm going to send them a Stack Overflow, right? You got to work on your search, and it's not going to be exactly as context sensitive as GitHub Copilot. But the nice thing about Stack Overflow is it's crowdsourced, right? I can see what got upvoted. I can see the description. I can see the people who disagree with it, why they disagree with it. So I can have some measure of intelligence. I sit on two different meetings every month, one for architecture or software leaders, CEOs, CTOs, things like that. Another one for architects, which you never show up for anymore.
I was actually there last time. You weren't there.
Oh, yeah, it's because I was in my car. And he doesn't like you to be in your car. And it was funny, that very morning, one of my developers during Scrum said, I lost a bunch of ground today. I had to go undo what Copilot did through the entire project. And I'm like, what? He's, well, I copied this one thing, I copied it again, and then it assumed I wanted to make every change. And I didn't realize that every time I hit tab, it was making the change. And so he literally changed like 500 lines of code. And it was all Git, so we just reverted it. But from Copilot Chat, and we're going to demo a lot of that today, what I like about it is if you know what you're doing, okay, let me reword that, because I use it when I don't know what I'm doing and I don't want to Google something. But if you know good software from bad software, like I forgot syntax on some JavaScript thing that I was doing, and we'll try Copilot, Chat. And I put it in how I'm going to do this. And I'm like, that's not right. And so I said, that doesn't look right to me, try again. Oh, well, then you should try this, right? And so it took me 3 times. And I got close enough that I could start using it. So in that sense, it really is a Copilot, right? If you're a junior dev and you're just starting out, you're really not even the pilot. So having a Copilot isn't going to help you, right? I do not want, especially what's going on with the airlines right now. I have a lot of flights next month. I don't want the person who just graduated from flight school flying my plane with a co-pilot who might give the right answer. Right? I think that's a problem. So let's talk about this. How do I get the most out of it? And I think that's true. I think it's a good pair programmer when you're stuck on something. I was doing a Blazor project, and there's some advanced things in Blazor that I hadn't worked through at the time. And I said, how do I do this? I looked at it and I said, well, no, try it again, and it was looking at my projects at the same time. So I had it with all the context. And then if you like it, you push a button and it moves the code over. Now, I've never pushed that button because I'm just too retentive about that. What I wouldn't have Copilot do, and there was a discussion we had with the Visual Studio team that, wait a minute. This part I can say, where they were talking about different refactorings that we were voting on for the next version of Visual Studio. And one of them was to refactor failing tests. And we all went apeshit. Because a test is failing because the software is broken, or it's a bad test. One of the two, right? But if it just goes through and says, oh, well, if I just change, the test says 2 + 2 is 5. And the code says 2 + 2 is 4. I'm just going to fix the test, right? The pass. And I said that completely backwards, didn't I? Whatever, right? And so I don't use it for unit testing. I'm maybe that's me being old school, but I do a lot of how can I make this better, right? I'll have an ugly statement that works, right? I do this with SQL also because you bang the keyword enough, you'll get the SQL to work, but then it's unmaintainable. So I've several times said, how can I make this better? And it actually does a pretty good job of it. How do you turn it on? You just select it, whatever. Like I said, slides. And we're going to show this. It actually works. Chat works really well for these things. And we're going to kind of go off the rails a little bit from what they want me to do because I experimented with this last time I gave this talk, and it was really pretty cool. Microsoft likes to invent words. Maybe this is an existing word. I don't know. Stochastic. Is that a real word? Oh, awesome. So it means something. We'll move on. No, really what it means is you ask Copilot the same question 5 times. It's like asking one of my children the same question 5 times. I'm going to get 7 answers. Right? You're not going to get the same answer multiple times usually, which honestly I think is pretty good. Because if you don't like the first answer, you ask it again, but maybe tweak it a little bit. And that's it. That's the entire slides that they made me show. So let's, I do have a script because I don't like typing. They can still see my screen, I presume?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's fire up Visual Studio. And I'm always in preview. Honestly, if you're not using preview, you should be. The preview version of Visual Studio. So it's got a lot of nice features in it, and they're really solid. They don't release things that are problematic. All right, so let's, we're going to do a, is what?
Yes.
Yes. I haven't done this in 9. I'm just debating which, no, I'm going to do standalone. This is one I know works. All right, so what are we going to call it? Let's call it Blazor Web App 1. I think that's a great name for it. And where are we going to put it? We're going to put it in our sandbox. Now we're going to put it under AI. Make a new folder for Louisville. I know that's not how you pronounce it, but that's how I have to spell it. And there we go. And boom. Copilot work. Shit, I forgot. Let's get rid of this. Boom. And we will have a Blazor app that says hello world, which is awesome, right?
It starts right there and
Can it generate a structure like this?
Sorry?
Can it generate a structure like this?
Can Copilot generate a structure like this? Well, it's just going off a template, so probably you could write a Copilot to do that, but this is just using templates. Let's just make sure it works, and it should come up and say hello world. Even with 32 cores, it still takes forever to run. Woohoo, we're done. Any questions? No, I'm kidding. All right, so we know we have an ugly app. Let's go into pages, let's go into home, and we're going to get rid of this, and we're going to do Alt/, and that is how you get inline Copilot to pop up. And so let's look at this. I am saying create a collection called cars. This collection is a list of car instances, make, model, year. It's going to be initialized by a call to the get cars method, which returns 3 instances. Default value should be empty collection, and the code should be placed in a code block. All right. So all I have right now is a page title. Let me go. Why are you? There we go. All right. So it's going to preview what it did, or what it's going to do. So here we have, oh, did you know about the shortcut presenter? It's another Mads thing.
No.
So when you hit a shortcut, it shows on the screen. I showed it to Jeremy because he's always out loud narrating when he types. All right. So what do we have? We have a code block that creates a collection of cars. The car is defined here. I think we like this, so we're going to accept it. Okay. So I gave it the parameters. Now, 100% of your success with Copilot is your prompt, right? So if you give it a bad prompt, it's going to give you a bad answer. If you give it a good prompt, it might give you a good answer, right? Okay, so we could run this and it won't do anything, but let's do this. All right, we're going to go back up here under page title, Alt/, and I could do this in, that's function slash. And I'm going to say, create a table of cars, taking its source as the cars collection. So it's going to think about it, and come back and suggest an answer. And we're going to take it. Okay. So now I run the app.
The model underneath that process is not configurable anyway for your side. This is building, this is a black box. Is that correct? Or would you be able to modify this model?
I'm thinking, hence my thinking face.
Just thinking about.
From a Copilot standpoint, there are some dials you can turn when you set it up in GitHub. You have to have a GitHub account. So I pay, well, I don't pay for it. I don't pay for anything. This is a paid subscription level. I know I can say just my code only. I think that's all the dials I can do.
Well, first off, one mention, there is actually a free version now. It's actually pretty useful.
Okay.
So it's the same thing, it's just 2,000 prompts a month, I think is what it is. And I don't know if it's, I gotta watch what I say. Yes, the news is out. I don't know if it's out. I know that it now said. So by default, it's using ChatGPT, or more open API. They are, I don't think it's in there yet, but you're gonna be able to say, oh, I want to use Claude, or I want to use this other model. Yeah, well, I just use that as an example, but yeah.
So you enrich it with your own organizational learning and feed that back into a model and then expose that.
You can build your own Copilot to do that,
Okay.
which we're not covering tonight.
Yeah.
All right.
So like I use Copilot outside of GitHub. I use Copilot a lot, and that actually does one. You know, as you keep on using it, it learns from the things you have been doing. It's actually kind of scary sometimes how well it'll answer things I ask it.
So in preview, these keystrokes work. I don't think they're in the regular version yet, but if I want to start a new workspace, it's just Control N, right? I don't have a thread in here yet, but I could. So I have selected the code block here. So Blazor, you can do it two ways. You can have a code block in your Blazor file, or you can have a code behind file. So it would be home.razor.cs. And when I first started working with Blazor, being an old timey-wimey guy like myself, I said everything has to be in a code behind file. Then I realized I was just swimming upstream. So I tend not to separate things into a code behind file. But because every time you do file, you add a new component, it comes with a code blocks. And I actually had to cut that out, create a new file, copy the file name, add the CES extension to it, and copy the code into it. And then I had to add a partial class tag to it because it becomes a partial. It's just a pain in the ass. Yeah.
So a question from the chat is whether or not you ever use, so you're using Visual Studio. The question here is that if you ever used one of Visual Studio Code, and if you ever compared them.
So I don't like using Visual Studio Code because I like to be productive.
Okay, I'm not the one who asked the question.
What?
That's all I work in is code.
So I mean, I have ReSharper. I've got
You got
lots of other
LLM.
extensions.
You've got the LLM.
Yes.
I mean,
It's the same engine.
I was gonna say, the answer to the question to the comparison is the same engine.
It's the same engine. Now, whether the IDE supports as well, what I'm doing in chat is going to be the exact same, right? Whether the alt slash in code works as well as in Visual Studio, I don't know. Plus I also support a lot of legacy apps right now. We're trying to move off of them, so I couldn't use code to open our web forms app. So
I do feel like Visual Studio works better when you're working with some of the more like C# apps and stuff. If you're just doing like what I do, where I just work mostly with like basic front end stuff, it's not as bad.
I would prefer Visual Studio Code if I wasn't in a C# project. It's lighter weight. It doesn't have. So there's a reason why my laptop is 15 pounds. It's got 128 gig of RAM and 32 cores. And I got this laptop specifically because I'm typically in 6 or 7 Visual Studio solutions all day long. And I would, on my other laptop, and these are really ugly, nasty, old code that we're trying to migrate. That's a whole nother talk I could give. And so it's like, all right, what I was doing was, all right, I'd open this project. I'd have to wait for everything to load. I go get a cup of coffee, come back, and then I do what I need to do. And like, oh, now I have to be in this solution. So I'd close Visual Studio because it was a memory hog. So it is a fat program, but I use the fat of it. So, that's where I am. Anyway, so I've selected the code. And so to answer your question about swimming upstream, this would make it easier, but it's still another step I'd have to do, right? So I want to move the code to a separate code behind. It tells me what it's doing. Here is the code, right? And shows everything. So I'm going to insert in the new file. There's my file. It is named incorrectly. And I'm going to go back to here and I'm going to, wait a minute. Why would it not? Here we go. I had to preview it and then accept it. So a couple extra steps, right? Here's my stop. I don't want that. This window is driving me. Can I move this sharing window? No, it won't move. I know you all can't see it on my screen, but I've got this little steam yard.
No, they see it.
They can see it. Okay. So it moved it, but now I have to go fix the name. So I go into my Solution Explorer and here's my home.cs, which I don't even know where I put it. This is awesome. And this is why I don't do this.
Sorry, but why is that step needed? I didn't get that part.
Sorry?
Why is that step not needed? Is manual renaming?
Because if you want to have a code behind file in Blazor, it has to be called whatever your Razor file is with the extension CS. So now that I have home.razor.cs, you see Visual Studio wires it up. It is really cranky at me because it didn't delete this.
I didn't know about.
And this is why I don't do this. So I guess because I didn't accept it and I just kept hitting escape. All right. So now I go into my home.razor. It compiles. Here's my partial class. So you have to have that. It has to inherit from component base. So if you haven't used Blazor, the way Blazor works, when you make a Blazor component or a Razor component or a Razor page, you have all the names are interchangeable. That gets compiled down into your C# code, right? Your DLL. When you split it out like this, it becomes two partial files. So my home.razor, which is a C# construct or a Razor construct, and all Razor is a web version of C#. That and its partial class, which here is home.razor.cs, all get compiled down the same way. So if I were to open up ILDASM or intermediate language disassembler, I would see the exact same thing between two. There would be no difference in what it compiles to. So what I did was I added a whole bunch of work for myself to end up with the same result. But it's part of the demo. And importantly, it's part of the demo that didn't work great. We did the styling, and part of it might have been my fault. We're going to pretend. All right.
Well, it also goes back to the point that you can't just trust everything Copilot does.
Correct. Now, this part I thought was really cool when I first walked through this demo, whatever it was, several months ago. So I'm going to add a new project. And I'm going to add, I should have it, ASP.NET Core Web API. Next. And you know what? Web Application 1 is a great name. And we're going to not use controllers. So we're going to get a minimal API. And we're going to create. And so now if I look at my program.cs, still using Swagger. And Chad and I were talking earlier before we went online, for those of you that are home listening. So Microsoft has stopped including Swagger or Swashbuckle in the default template for APIs with .NET 9 because they wrote their own. Their own is what is in there works, but it's not complete. So I tend not to use it. All right, so now I have the minimal API. So let's do this. Let's go down here. And first of all, let's get rid of the weather forecast. We don't need this. So I could have just done file new project, use nothing. All right. So let's do the old Alt tab. I could do this in Copilot Chat as well. But this I thought was pretty slick. So I'm going to prompt it. So create a minimal API get method, returning a list of 3 cars in JSON format. Each car should have a make, model, and year property. And the method should return the list of cars without converting it to JSON. So let's let it think a little bit. Think. There's my app.map get. And there's my list of cars, and it's returning it as an iAction result. You don't know that because, well, maybe you do. No, it doesn't tell you, but it is returning an iAction result, which by default, when coming over the wire, will be returned as JSON. Oh, even here. Sometimes GitHub Copilot proposes code that's too complex. Make sure it matches this, and it did. All right. So we run this. It'll show it in Swagger, so who cares? All right. But you know what? This is what we do. So we are going to. Why am I copying it? Yep, it should be that. Okay. So let's go to our home.razor. Let's get rid of this. Right. And we're going to get rid of that. We still have our car, which I think we need. But let's do this. And we're going to go alt slash connect to the web application to get the list of cars in JSON format. Make sure to ignore the casing of the properties. Am I in the right place? I am in the right place. Now, it doesn't give you all of the using statements that you want. And possible no reference exception, so I should clean it up, but I'm not going to. All right, so now, in theory, cars here will be a list of cars that it gets from my endpoint, but it doesn't know what the endpoint is. So what I need to do is I go into my web application, properties, launch settings, and here is my HTTPS. Oh, you know what? Let's do this. Get rid of you. You're evil. Get rid of you. You suck. All right. Here's my HTTPS. There's my endpoint. We're going to go back into our home.razor, and we're just going to do this. And in theory, I will still have a list of cars with some really bad styling. No, I won't. Anybody know why? Anybody paying attention? I only started the Blazor app. I didn't start the API. So one thing you get in preview, which I don't think has made it to regular Visual Studio yet, is I right-click on the solution and I say configure startup projects. And I go to multiple startup projects and I rename this profile to Louisville.net profile. And we're going to set them both to start. We're going to move the web application up. Not that it matters a whole lot. I apply and save it. So now I can have multiple profiles in here. So if you're ever in a situation where you got multiple projects and sometimes you want to start these two, sometimes you want to start these other two, then you just set a profile up and you pick your profile. So now when we run it, here's my swagger. And it's returning the cars. And I obviously did something wrong with the URI. I'm not getting any cars back. So once again, Copilot messed up a little bit. So what do we think we need to do differently? We're going to try this because I don't know. It sounded like a trick question, like I knew the answer. It wasn't. Oh, if I would have read the script. Comes back and says, we're blocked by cores. Because I have a web browser trying to connect directly to an API endpoint. So cores just shut me down, right? This is different if you had an MVC app or a Razor Pages app, because that's server-side technology. You're not calling from the browser. You're calling from server-side. So we need to add in cores. So this, I think, is pretty slick. And there are a few things in here I think are pretty slick. So let's do this. We are going to, doesn't matter where, this is fine. We're going to do alt/, set up cores and web API applications so my Blazor app can call it. I want any app. Okay, so this is not what you want to do in real life, right? I'm adding a cores policy that says, come and get it.
Well, that's what you're supposed to do.
And that's why you're the other architect. What did I miss? What using statement am I missing?
How did you find that out in the browser?
Oh, yeah. So let me show you that. Let me undo this because I obviously wasn't paying enough attention to what I should have been doing. I don't need that anymore. So it's a browser app. So I'm going to DevTools, right? So I open DevTools and lots of console applications. So if I look at, I could go into network also, that would show it. I think I have to reload the page for network to show. Right, so here's my cars request. Fetch mode is cores. Right, so here's my preview and my response. Anyway, I go here and we'll zoom in. Right. So access to fetch has been blocked by cores. So let me figure out why I broke this. Oh, because I wasn't paying attention to where I should do this. So let me go to Copilot Chat. You do a new context. I'm going to paste this in here. Why are you not letting me paste? Priority cores. I do not want to type it. There we go.
Well, while you're waiting for that, so will Copilot be useful for a better performance code when we pass large collections from the database?
Ask it again.
Will Copilot be useful for better performance code when we pass large collections from the database?
So first of all, if you're passing large collections from the database, that's not a Copilot problem. That's a design problem. So if you're, I don't know, and we can try it. We could do something like optimize this code and see what it does. When we get into the database part of this, we can probably play with that. All right, so
I mean, I think the root is how well does it know what to do with EF, so EF doesn't.
well that was cool because the demo's using MySQL, and I said to use EF, and then I said use a repository pattern, and Copilot read my book. All right, so what did it do? We're adding cores. We're going to configure it, allow any origin. We're going to use it in the pipeline. So I'm looking at this. So it's going to be adding in some additional code. Here's adding cores. And there's two steps when you add cores into an API. You have to build it into the application builder. And if you're not familiar with building APIs using ASP.NET Core, there's two steps. Let me back up. There's only two types of applications in .NET Core. There's console applications, there's class libraries. So in Framework, we had this concept of a web application, and those are gone. So all a web application is, and even Blazor is the same way, it's a class library that creates a web host that listens and responds to requests. That's why when I do run in debug mode, there's a console window that pops up. Okay. So what we have to do is we have a WebAssembly host builder here. Oh, I'm in the wrong file. That is why I blew it up. So let me do this. Control N, Control V. Oh my God. I understand why passwords don't allow you to copy, but what is going on? So I have Visual Studio Code open over here where I'm getting the notes. It obviously sucks because it's not letting me copy them. I'm blaming Visual Studio Code. No, I'm kidding. No, I am blaming Visual Studio Code, but it will not let me copy this, and I do not want to type it.
Well, like, is it, like, where's it copying? Oh, it's from,
I'm in a markdown
it
file.
won't let you you're in like a markup file?
Mhm.
That's kind of odd, because, I mean, markup files are a huge part of it.
No, it's 100% user error, I'm sure.
I know if it's like in a comment or something, like when it shows like PR comments and stuff, if you want to copy something out of one of those, you have to like highlight it and then use the keyboard shortcut. It won't work if you try to right click it, which is irritating when someone puts a comment and is like, hey, use this wording instead.
So copy, paste. Using the mouse that worked. All right. That's the expert in the room. I should have done that before. All right. So now I'm in the right program.cs. So we create a web application builder. We inject our services into it. And then we say, if I'm in development, use Swagger. So I'm injecting those in. I'm using HTTPS redirection. Here's where I build my app. So now I have a web app that can then respond to requests, listen for requests, and respond to them in the pipeline. So I need to be in this file, not the other one. And I'm going to set up cores. And it's thinking really hard. It says, all right, what are we going to do? Well, this is the same. We're going to add cores. There's the build. And then down here, we have to say, my application that I just built, use this cores configuration that I just injected. And so we're going to preview the changes and we're going to accept them. And we're going to run again. Now, in real life, when I'm doing this with Copilot Chat, I never click on that preview button. I will look at it. I will copy the code I want. I'll bring it over and I do it that way. And that's, again, just because I'm going to save after you accept. Does that just mean to do that? Yeah, everything I have to say because it didn't take.
I'm just curious if it was me. I always make it save and then run it, nothing changed.
This is why Blazor sucks. Got the wrong API endpoint.
Security.
So in case you're wondering, I could have built this application in about 15 minutes without fighting Copilot to do it. So it is not improving my developer speed. Oh, because I deleted all this shit. Yeah. What did I mistype? That's interesting. I think it does read my code. So I don't know I've ever built an API in my life that doesn't have API as the starting segment. but the one that it built didn't. And so when I copied the URL, I put API in there. No, it did it. Whatever. Maybe it'll work. Let's try warm reload. No dice. So there's a thing called hot reload that doesn't really work, which is why we call it warm reload. Oh. We have cars. Okay.
What did you do this time? What did you like put back?
Oh, I fixed the URI. So the endpoint, this is how I build my APIs because I'm old and I won't change my ways. But the way it built the API didn't have the word API in it. What? What do you know about APIs? You just use Aspire. You just click and drag shit. This is half the reason they like me coming down because I just give you crap. All right. So now we have a working app that does nothing. Okay, let's do this. We're going to go off the rails. We're done with the script. Let's have some fun. So in here, we're going to add in Entity Framework. So manage NuGet packages. And we're going to browse. And we're going to go Microsoft Entity Framework. Entity. I do literally have to say it out loud as I spell things. And we actually want SQL Server, which will install everything I need. We're going to go back down to 8 because we only use stuff that's long-term support. Yes, we're going to apply this. I accept. All right. So now, I just put it in the Blazor app, didn't I? I did. Let's put it in my web application. So let's have some fun. So right now we're just hard coding a list. So let's do this. Start a new session, Control N. I want to use Entity Framework core to store the car class in a table named cars in the, what's a good schema name? Anyone? Yeah, just the schema name. Where do I put it?
Car.
How about vehicle? Schema.
That came from the guy who works on car systems.
So I want to use any framework core to store the car class in a table named cars in the vehicle schema. I want the DB context to, this is totally freelance here, so we're going to see how bad it does. I want the DB context to use the DB context design time interface. I hope that's the right name. It's all templates I have at work. So to be able to run migrations against the database. The database should run in local DB and be named the car demo, should be named car demo. The CRUD, we're having fun now. The CRUD operations should be executed through a repository. Odds that it works?
40, 60.
That's higher than I would give it.
First time.
All right, we're gonna hide that guy for now. So what did it do? So there's our model. All right, I would have called it entities, but that's okay. Here's our context. Right, so created a DB context. There's the car context, taking in properly the DB context options being injected in. There's my DB set. It created a table. So it's using the Fluent API instead of data annotations. We could probably modify the prompt to do data annotation instead, but there's the vehicle schema. So pick that up. The car context factory, I designed time DB context factory car context, creates a DB context using SQL Server, connection string of local DB, MS SQL local DB, database car demo, trust connect. Holy shit. I didn't expect it to work.
You give little faith.
Here's my iCar repository with all of my CRUD operations. And here's how we modify. So we're adding a DB context in a DI container. We're using SQL Server to get the connection string of car demo, which means it added it to the application settings.json file. We're adding it into the DI container. We build it. And then we're from the car repository, we're calling get all cars async after injecting the car repository into the minimal API. And there's the update to the app settings.json file to hold a connection string. And there's my migrations. Now it's using the NuGet migration pattern, so we can fix that. Wow, that's pretty impressive. All right, so let's. Well, it was funny because I did something like this. I started with their basic model and kind of went a little off the rails, but I didn't do it from scratch the way I did here. Now, is it going to remember the directory? That's close. So web application, where are we going to put it? New folder, models. Here's my car class. So now we have that. Here's my DB context class, insert into new file. We're going to save it. And yeah, you know what? We're going to put it all here. Why not? It's just a dumping ground. Here's my repository. Insert a new file. Save that. It's also going to go here. And then here is the update to here. So we're going to preview the changes there. Yep, that's not where we want to be. So we're going to cancel out of this one and go back to the active document, which is here. And we're going to preview the changes. Oh, it didn't like that at all. I don't like that at all. It is trying to inject it. This is their program at CS, isn't it? It is. Okay. So select all. It just makes me nervous. All right, we're going to accept it. So we're going to show how it fails. Yeah, it failed big time. So what you want to do here is copy, Control A, Control Z, Control V. True Stack Overflow development. All right, so can't move that at all. How do I get to my Solution Explorer? Here's my app settings.json. Here's my app settings.development.json. We go back to Copilot Chat, which I have to do this to get around the stinger. Is this not movable at all? Oh, it is movable. Where's the hide thing? Oh, right here. RTFM, baby. RTFM. Okay. So then it tells us what we did. We're not going to actually do it this way because I all right, I want to use .NET migrations, not NuGet. So it's telling me what packages I need. That's kind of cool. We're going to add those packages. So that makes me wonder if it knew that the design package was already in my project, if it would have prompted me for not using the NuGet. It's an interesting thought. All right, so now this is all the same. And then we get down here. Holy cow. Color me impressed. There's my migrations. .NET migrations add initial create. So it's going to create the migration if the build would work. All right, so it's not all roses. All right, so we are going to fix some things here. So refactor, adjust namespaces, next. And that really needs to be a primary constructor. Just want to make Jeremy squirm. So if you're not familiar with how EF Core works, if you're doing model first, and I hate that term, but that's what they use, you make all your changes to your C# classes and you build a migration that then you can use to update the database. You don't have to, we never update anything but our local machine from migrations. You can script out the migrations, or you can use a tool like Redgate's data compare and schema or SQL compare. So in theory now, I have a database. I click it. Probably clicked it twice. This is bloatware.
You said something about templates that you want to make sure are being used.
So you said I think you asked me if Copilot could build the entire project. Every project type that you see in Visual Studio is driven off of a template. So if it actually loaded.
I thought you were referring to like code standards that you guys agreed on.
Oh yeah, you could actually, but that's editor config and things like that. So you could do that. I don't know if you can do it with Copilot Chat or Copilot to have it adjust that. So all right, hold on. Let me get here. There's my card demo, all lowercase. And there's my cars table. With no shit with data. I'm sorry, color me surprised, because last time I did a demo, it actually didn't pop it. I had to do the next step to do that. So let me just, if go on a little side journey here. So let me, we'll do command prompt. That's fine. So if I do .NET new -L and blow this up, right? So these are the templates that are installed on my machine that I can use to build projects. So I could do it from the command line. I could have done the Blazor WebAssembly standalone app from the command line. There's all the Maui crap that is infected and the Aspire crap that has infected my machine. So you could build your own templates, right? And a lot of vendors do, right? So XUnit just came out with version 3, and it's a completely different template because XUnit version 3 is no longer an assembly. It's no longer a class library. It is a console app. So they have a new template, right? So you had to install the template. So you could certainly install new templates and then probably, instruct GitHub Copilot to give you the right .NET command, but then you're just doing .NET new, your template, and I don't know how Copilot helps. It's not really helping.
Well, I'm still trying to figure out what Copilot is built. Is it the right tool for the experienced C# developer? Question mark. Is it more like someone coming in new to this?
As I said in the beginning, if you're coming in new, then I will not let you. I've got a developer on my team. I don't let him use Copilot.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't know the difference. I'm not thrilled about it all being in the same file.
And is your experience also? I mean, this is C# mainly, right? Like, what about other languages? Is it similar there?
The other languages don't matter.
I use it a lot.
It'll work for any language. Good friend of mine from the speaker community who moved to Germany, but she was always hysterical. When this was first coming out, where was I? I was in San Diego, so that had to be 2 years ago. And she said, build me a Python script to do whatever, right? And this was a ChatGPT. Copilot wasn't out yet. And she ran it, and this was all on Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook, whatever. And she said it didn't work. So she typed back in the same thread. It didn't work. And ChatGPT said it worked on my machine. She screenshotted it. Unless she's really good with Photoshop, it really happened.
You say you don't let junior devs use Copilot, but it's like you don't let them use any AI or just Copilot specifically.
I don't let them use any AI.
But like AI, but obviously they don't. You said they don't know better. Like
It can dramatically increase how quickly they fuck up production. Yes, that is a true statement.
yeah, but I mean, like you have staging and
So now I have to have a senior dev. Now I have to have a senior dev do code reviews. I have my product owners have to do extra testing because I have a junior dev who doesn't know any better. He's just copying and pasting shit into the project.
but just like completely cutting it off. You think that's it?
Until they can prove to me that they can tell good code from bad code.
Okay, how are they getting the answers when you just documentation? I'm not saying
Well, they could read my book to start with and learn a lot about .NET development.
So I guess I can use Copilot.
There's Stack Overflow, there's.
Yeah.
No, Stack Overflow, I think, is extremely valuable. And maybe you weren't here yet when I said this. When we started talking about it, I think Stack Overflow is much better, and I might say exponentially better for a junior dev because it's crowdsourced, right? They can see the discussion. Somebody says you should do it this way, and you're going to have 10 haters saying why it's horrible, right? Because that's what Stack Overflow is turned into. But then you're going to have another one, and one of them is going to be accepted, right? Well, what's always frustrating is you find the right question, and nobody's found and accepted the answer, right? That's frustrating. But there's a discussion around it, right?
Use Copilot on the web, it'll give you links to all of its sources and you can click around and most of them are gonna be Stack Overflow.
Okay. So you're a
Probably
junior
using
dev
that
and you're
in
trying to
online.
get your PBI done and Stack Overflow gives, or a Copilot gives you something. Are you going to click on all the links to go read up why, or are you just going to cut and paste?
Well, I mean, if you gave them that requirement, wouldn't they do that for you? You can tell them not to use
You want to make sure.
Copilot.
Say, right, who says I don't go to Copilot, who's copying the first thing I see in Copilot? Don't read the discussions that, when someone.
You mean Stack Overflow?
Or, yeah. You know.
Well, I would
Go
hope
to
that.
the one with check
So
mark.
if you're not smart enough to hit the one with the green check mark, you need to be the other architect.
So the difference is Copilot, right?
Well, no, but
And we get
okay.
be devil's advocate.
So if you're hiring idiots, you get what you pay for.
Be devil's advocate.
I was just saying that if you use that one, they can get the back end information on it and learn more about it and just take it.
Okay.
I mean, anybody can just copy the code. So if you want them to learn about what's going on, they can click around, get more information.
You're right. They can, right? But if there's friction to doing that, and none of you all work for me, so you probably don't really care about my opinion, to be honest, in that sense. But if there's an extra step, right? I mean, it's how much time have you spent, or it's getting rid of extra clicks, right, to make the user experience better? Because if they have to click something, if they have to click 3 times, they're probably going to click twice or once, right? And it needs to be a better user experience. So if there's friction involved in getting that information, they're not going to go to it. It's human nature. It's like, oh, there's an answer. I'm going to take it.
I would argue they're probably not the developer you want.
Yeah.
To me,
That's
it's
my
like,
point.
If I'm learning about stuff and I don't know what the code does, I'm going to go and figure out why it's doing what it's doing.
So we're recording and we're
I'm not-
broadcasting, so I can't give my honest opinion about why I have this rule. But maybe at the brick house, maybe some secrets, not secrets, some wisdom will be imparted. All right.
You got another question on the chat here.
Yeah.
So, does the Copilot check the current application versions and provide the third-party packages according to that to avoid conflicts? If not, will we just be upgrading and downgrading versions based on dependencies?
So, and I'm not an expert, but I'm gonna give my opinion because this is the first time I've noticed Copilot suggest packages for me, right? Because I didn't have this any framework core design, which I need for the migrations, but there is no version specified, which means it's a Microsoft package. I'm going to get the LTS package. There has been a lot of, and I haven't heard about it recently because maybe people will just stop doing it, but there are a lot of times, Eric Boyd, good friend of ours, was giving a talk on AI, and he does a lot of Python, and it was suggesting a NuGet package to solve his problem, and the package didn't exist. So I don't trust Copilot, ChatGPT. What's the one that's sending all of our data to China? DeepSeek, any of those to recommend me a package, right? I'm going to do my own research on that. And that's just because it's been notoriously bad at just hallucinating, right? These things, and the problem with all AI, if you say, I want an answer to this question, it will give you an answer to that question. It will not say, I don't know. It will not say it depends. It'll just say, here's an answer. And it could be wildly wrong, but it'll give you an answer, right? And a lot of the hallucinations, the famous hallucinations that really caused problems were because of bad prompts. Give me 5 ways to do this. And if there's only 3 ways in the entire universe to do this thing, the AI will give you 5 because you asked for 5, right? And it's going to make the last 2 up completely.
Request of that API before the API doesn't support it. Use this method.
Yeah.
It's not a thing.
So we have a runtime error. So this is how good ChatGPT is at giving me the right answer, and I know what I'm doing. Maybe I don't. So let's just step through. So at this point is where it's blowing up. I know what it is. Let's see if ChatGPT, I know what the problem is. No, I don't. It's local DB. It should not be a problem. So when I hit this, invalid object name vehicle.cars. So it is not finding vehicle.cars. Did it mess up my schema name?
Yeah.
It did. That's very interesting. So in the migration, let's look at the migration.
Yeah.
Yeah. Copilot is programming practice more than
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I have no idea where I put the migrations. It went completely off the reservation on me. Oh, can we say that anymore? I don't think we can say that anymore.
Have the whole thing in my head and that's pretty. Say edit it. The file's actually getting cleared in the software.
Well, I don't know where they went. So it's, oh, it keeps saying it failed to build.
Yeah.
They were both right.
Last time I did something like.
Okay, I have a specific answer for the package problem. Microsoft changed its policy. So Entity Framework Core Design 9.0 got installed through the .NET Add Package command, but I'm in a .NET 8 project and I'm running EF Core Framework SQL Server 8, which is why everything blew up. So if I look at this, 9, well, it moved everything to 9. Oh, were you guys? I don't know if you knew this. This is something I learned fairly recently. Let me see if I can remember the syntax. 8.0 point star, comma 9.0 parenthesis. You ever seen that syntax before? In your project, now I don't recommend doing this in prod, but it's great for demo and samples and labs. This says get me minimum version 8.0.0 and any feature beyond that, right? But less than 9. So the parenthesis is less than, the bracket is or equal to. So when I do this and I go into NuGet Package Manager or Manage NuGet Solutions, Manage Package for Solutions, there we go. And I look at what's installed. And so now WebAssembly is 8, but let's go down to Entity Framework Core. Yeah, it's in the web applications 9.02, but I go to design. Oh, because I didn't clean and rebuild. Anyway, so this is why Copilot is your Copilot and not your pilot. So we'll do the Visual Studio song and dance of clean, rebuild, clean, rebuild, clean, rebuild. Somewhere still thinks I have a version 9. Oh, right here. So what I like about this is, so I teach a lot of, 1 day and 2 day and 4 day courses. So I'm constantly having to update all my sample code. Well, when you've got 45 labs that you're maintaining, and each one of them is a step, step 1, step 2, step 3, and you got to go and update from 8.11 to 8.0 or 8.0.11 to 8.013. It's tedious. Heck. So I do this in all my lab work, and it's great. We do not do this in prod, because all of a sudden we go from 8.0.11 to 8.0.12, and there's a breaking change, and we don't know. We just deployed. Well, and that's never happened to Microsoft before. All right, so I'm not going to head down this path anymore, because now it's just trying to debug what Copilot did to me. Now, in defense, I never did the migration because it failed because of versioning. Sorry, we're going to try. Okay. So let's add the initial migration, see if it works this time.
Sorry, can they see when code originates from Copilot?
No. So then you could work for me and ignore my don't use Copilot and go ahead and put it in there anyway. Well, that's the beauty you get. We can track it down. All right, so somehow I had everything out of, I'm just going to delete that table because it's just confused. I just want it to work once so we can go on to the other conversations. Nope. All right. So there was the question that came up earlier. Oh, you know what? That is probably the problem. It worked. It had no data. Okay. So we didn't get an error that time. We fixed the, now, to be fair, I would never give Copilot, and I use Copilot Chat, not a lot, but some. I would never have given it that many commands in a row. Populate the table with the sample record to see what it remembers. But you can tell that it's been reading Microsoft propaganda. I'm sorry, documents. The seed method is notoriously bad. All right, and to do that, we need to update 0, which takes us back to no database. And then we remove and then we add and then we update. So if anything, all these shenanigans have shown you that it can be helpful and it can be just a time suck. Okay. We're going to cheat. So the seed method is how Microsoft has suggested adding data into the database. The seed method only runs when a migration is applied, and it's not my recommended approach to how you actually seed data. So what I do is I create a method, literally called, and it's in my book. I should have brought stacks of them. I should have brought some copies in. Create a method called initialize database. And what it does, it deletes all the records that are in there. Yeah. And then it resets all the identity and then populates it. So it's only used in dev, right? So if I'm running integration tests against my database, I need to know that after the test is done, all the records are exactly as they were when the test started. So if I'm adding a record, I got to remember to remove it. If I update a record, I remember it. So instead of doing all that shenanigans, I literally have in XUnit, you can do this. You have a test context that runs a before test that empties the data. I can pull that up. That's in my demo code. And then reseeds the data every time. Because I can run it at will, right? As opposed to having to do a migration every time I need the data in there. But I really just want the car to come back in the UI so I can stop talking about the Blazor app. Because we did have the question about performance. I wanted, yay, look at that. You have a car. All right, we can put this shit away. All right, so the question, if I remember right, was how do we get the performance to be better if we're pulling back a whole bunch of records? And I was snarky and I said, don't pull back a whole bunch of records. Is my old timey-wimey memory accurate on that one, Chad?
Yes.
Okay. So let's do this. Let's go into our repo, which I have no idea where I put that. Car repository. Get all cars. How can I speed up the get all cars method when it returns a lot of data? Is that the question? Was that the question?
Cool stuff. Yeah.
All right, to speed up, use pagination, filtering, and projection. All right. So here we have our updated car repository, which get all cars takes a page number and should allow me to scroll somehow, but I can't figure it out. Page size. So it's doing skip and take. So that actually is I have to say it's an asterisk. It's a valid way of doing it. It is one of the ways of doing it. That's a better way of saying it because skip and take can have problems. Then I select the car. So this is a projection. Here's the reason to go to EF Core 9. With EF Core 9, when you do a projection, which is I'm taking these queries from maybe different data sources and I'm creating a new object out of it. The query that gets written is select star from cars, inner join models, inner join, drivers, et cetera, et cetera. And so you're getting all fields back, right? So they're all coming across the wire. And you say, select new object, which I'm projecting this data into a new object. And I say, well, give me the model name and the color and the make name and the driver's first name. So I'm using 4 fields out of maybe 20. We brought 20 fields across the wire, didn't you get across the wire? Now, is that significant if they're just small text fields? No, but if they're blobs or text fields in, not varchar, but text fields, that can be significant. With EF Core 9, and this has nothing to do with Copilot, but with EF Core 9, it does projection trimming. So it'll look at your query and say, I only need these 4 properties. It actually modifies the generated SQL. And this is true for SQL Server. I don't know if other database providers do it. And instead of doing select star from these, it selects, c.make, comma, c.year, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one way. So that is a valid answer to if you're in EF Core 9 against SQL Server, that will make the query faster, potentially. Skipping and taking paging is very important because no human's going to look at 10,000 records, right? We had a developer who's no longer with the firm, and now still a consultant time, so this is a whole lot of years ago, who couldn't figure out why the search was so slow. And so I look at the code, and he's using DBML, so EF6 Designer. And the first line of the C# code was cases.toList, right? And then he started applying where clause to the resulting list. And came back with, 30 cases. He said, well, it's only 30 cases. Why is it bringing my machine down? I said, well, you're actually bringing back every case that's ever been in this firm, right? So you don't want to bring them all back. You want to have a good where clause. And if you're bringing back a lot, you still want to do pagination. The problem with pagination, and it's not a huge problem, but let's say that I take the first 10 records and I'm ordering by last name, right? And the last name, the 11th last name, or the 10th last name is Japiske. Okay, now I want to take page 2. So I want to do 11 to 20. But green gets inserted into the database. And now Japiske is the 11th record. So when I was looking at page 1, Japiske's last record. And I'll go to the next page, and Japiske's the first record because the data set has changed. As long as you understand that, it could be an issue. It's not a problem. But to answer the question, Copilot made some decent suggestions. Any other questions from?
Well, there was a question about where we can find your books.
Yeah. Actually, that's kind of, hopefully I don't get in too much trouble if I do this. And I've stopped writing, but this .NET 6 C# 10 book is still very valid. So let's go to Amazon. I spell Amazon correctly. And let's search for Japiske. Yeah, see, there's Carl, Dave. Those are all relatives of mine. Okay, so my book is the first search result. That's mine. That's mine. I'm not sure where Korean food noodles of boiled bean threads. Active Meditation by Carl Japiske. Oh, it's not even showing anymore. I used to fight for the #1 spot with. I'm not going to say it out loud. It just works so much better if I just show it. There it is. Fart Proudly. Writings of Benjamin Franklin you never read in school. So that used to compete for the top spot on Amazon because they rank it by sales. And searches. So I just set up a bot to keep searching from my book, and I got on top of it. But now going back to the book. So what's not in my book is Blazor, because when .NET 6 C# 10 came out, Blazor was really weak, and we had a deadline. It's 1,700 pages of goodness. All of it still stands up. There's not a whole lot of changes. I cover Razor pages, I cover APIs, I cover MVC. Not a ton of changes in there. I don't cover minimal APIs because I don't think you should ever use them other than demo code. And then there's some little things like temporal tables I don't think we're in. 7 or 8. No. You can't version them. Security is lacking. Error handling is problematic. So the reason they were created is because the academic was complaining that it took too many lines of code to write .NET apps. So he said, we can't use C#. It takes too long to write Hello World. So they brought in top-level statements and global implicit usings. And so now instead of having, right, so if I go in here and I say add new project, and I do a console app, and that's fine. Console app 1. do not use top level statements. Create. And this is actually even cleaner because what I really need to have in here is using system. That's all I need for this, right? So I have namespace declaration, class declaration, method declaration, and then I have hello world. So if I don't use top levels, or if I choose to use top level statements, this compiles to the exact same thing. So if I open up ILDASM and look at what this compiles to, there is a program class. There is a main method. Now they have a little different name. It's program $, it's main $. Minimal APIs came out of the same movement. Right? I want to write an API in 3 lines of code. Great. Let's version it. Oh, you can't version it. Oh, let's document it with Swagger. Well, they actually just added that recently. Let's add some advanced security around it. It's demoware. It's great for what Jeremy does, right? He's talking about async and iQueryable, and he just needs an API to spit data back. So he uses the minimal API for that. But I'd never use one in production. It's only for testing. That's perfect. What other questions?
You think AI sometimes provides legacy code?
100%. It is scouring.
It's getting better.
It is scouring the internet, all of the internet. So all of that crappy code is in there. Yeah.
Well, Microsoft didn't help it when you had .NET Framework and then .NET Core. Now it's just .NET.
Yeah.
It makes it really hard for anything to try to figure out what it's supposed to do.
There was a question about how I do. Let me pull up AutoLot. This is the labs that I teach, but let me just show you. Ooh, I had a lot of files open. You get that right. So you can just move your mouse wheel and then you can show all of them for just one line. So if I go into my data access, EF structures, no, initialization, sample data initializer. Right. So I have clear and reseed data. So clear data goes through and the Sharper is waiting to wake up. It's still thinking. God love you. All right, so it goes through, and the nice thing about EF Core is you can use the design time model to get the actual table names. So I go in and I delete everything from it, but then I run dbcc check ident to reset the identity on all the tables, so I know that my first record is always going to be ID of 1, my second record is always ID of 2, and as opposed to having that crawling. And then once I clear the data, I just run through and I do an insert. So I have just lists of data over here. Here's my sample data. And we did the same thing we do at work. Right? We have our core data that we use to seed the database. And so when I write my tests, integration tests, right? So if we look at card tests, right? So I have a class fixture, and this is X unit. It's still X unit 2. So the class fixture then is ensure AutoLot database test fixture, right? So it goes through, it gets the configuration because I use the configuration system within. I then get the context. I clear and reseed the database. I dispose of the context. So before every integration test, I know exactly what the state of my database is. You can't do that with the seed method that they have. I kind of went all over the place, but that's kind of how I speak. So. Anything else? Any from you all?
What we were talking about is I was thinking about Copilot for Power BI. There's some research.
I mean, you have Copilot for everything.
Yeah.
And
did you work with it?
No, I don't work with Power BI. No. We have a data team at work, and they do that. They're actually using not Power BI. What's the thing that Fabric? So it's Copilot for everything, right? And for those of us that are old enough to remember when .NET first rolled out in 2000, right? It was .NET the programming language, and there was .NET the server, and there was .NET the pizza, and .NET the what was the joke that they kept doing in Spaceballs? .NET the action figures. Side story to that. So when Mel Brooks wanted to do Spaceballs, he reached out to Lucas and said, "Hey, I want to do this parody of Star Wars." And he said, "I love the idea. You cannot sell any merch. There's zero merch." He says, "That is the restriction. You cannot sell any Spaceballs merch," which is why throughout the entire movie, they had dolls and VHS tapes and lunch boxes and everything else all throughout the movie. And honestly, Copilot is, I think, a good term, and you can build your own, right? I'm working on building one. What I thought was very interesting, and of course, our CEO, the founder, called me after Satya came out with the SaaS applications are dead. Everything's going to be agents talk. And he said, can we get rid of case manager and new case and just have it all be agents? And I said, Microsoft's bottom line is tied directly to selling subscriptions to OpenAI, right? And Copilot and ChatGPT, because they own part of that still. So, of course, he's going to be up there saying that the future is this, so people start investing in it. I said, do you think that Microsoft Office or Office 365 is going to go away? And that all of our email is just going to be a bunch of AI agents that are running around? He goes, oh, no, I guess not. I said, agents have their place. I mean, we're doing I say we, there's a spin-off, if you will, of the firm called Aspen AI. And they're doing some really interesting things with AI. So we have an AI intake, right? It's doing real-time text, voice to text, and then text to voice. It's actually, I think I might have mentioned this last time I were here. They picked the right person to do the voice because we've had several potential clients ask for our AI agent's phone number because they wanted to take her to dinner. And so William reached out to me. He says, I never thought I would have to program a prompt to turn somebody down for a date on a legal intake line. I said, well, you haven't talked to intake enough. So agents, co-pilots get stuff to assist it. I mean, if you think about it, ReSharper, what is that? It's a co-pilot, right? It helps me refactor, right? Now, it's very algorithm driven. Although they do have their own AI, which MVPs will get it for free. So I haven't tried that. You use the Grammarly. Grammarly's AI driven, right? And it's funny talking to some of about once a quarter, I go to Chicago and there's a huge gathering of CISOs and CEOs and CIOs and CTOs. And everybody's like, we're never going to adopt AI, right? It's not safe. It's not secure. You're going to take your data. And I would just throw out there. I said, hey, have you seen the latest release of Grammarly? Oh, Grammarly's awesome. We use it all the time to fix our writing. I said, you just sent your data somewhere, right? So I saw an interesting stat somewhere, not a stat, a comment. Maybe it was on LinkedIn. It's hard to tell anymore because LinkedIn is certainly not just for professionals anymore. But there's this whole debate, AI is going to remove the need for programmers and blah, 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 blah. And somebody said, well, they'll definitely make them better. And this one person posted, I used to be able to write 1,000 lines of code a day. With Copilot, I can do 10,000 lines of code a day. Now I'm a 10x dev. And I thought that was brilliant. That's all I got. I mean, we could sit and chat, or we can go ahead and beverage and chat. Thanks. And we did get the app to finally work.